All right. Are we ready?
Take it away.
All right. I think we're ready. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us from all over the world. We're really excited for you to be here today. We are introducing the Superapp SDK put together by Ionic. But first, introductions. I'm Christine Presibi on the product team, and my colleague Connor is here as well. Connor, would you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, Connor Simmons here, joining you from the product team as well at Ionic, and super excited to be with you all today to talk Superapps.
Excellent. Yeah, we've got a lot to cover, so let's go ahead and get started.
All right.
All right, so first, our agenda for today, we've got a lot going on today. First, we're going to tackle the state of apps today. We're going to set the groundwork and kind of uncover how apps are consumed, the downsides of using so many apps in a given day, and the complications of keeping up with the demand of app development. Next, we'll explore how Superapps could potentially be the answer to some of these problems facing companies, consumers, and workers, as we'll see. Then we'll introduce the tool that we have created to help you achieve your Superapp goals if you decide to go in that direction, if that's best for you or your company. And we call that the Superapp SDK. So we'll dig into that. Then our resident expert, Josh Thomas, will demonstrate our very own Superapp that we created here at Ionic called Supernova. And then we'll finish our presentation with real-life examples of our customers building super apps, and we'll leave some time at the end for questions. So be sure to write your questions in the chat when you think of them. And just one housekeeping tip, when you go to the chat, make sure to switch the mode to everyone so everyone could see your questions, unless you want the host to just see the questions. But if you want everyone to see your questions, go ahead and switch that to everyone in the chat. And let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to begin today with a poll. We'll give you about 30 seconds to answer, and Connor and I will play along as well. You might be surprised with the answer that you come up with. So the question is, there it goes. How many applications do you or your employees use daily for work? Do you use 1 to 4, 5 to 8, 9 to 12, or 13 plus? I did a little survey of my own this morning, looking at all the apps I have on my phone. they number in the hundreds. It's embarrassing. Some are work-related apps, some are consumer apps, but yeah, we've got a lot of apps on our phone, Connor.
Yeah, I was doing the same, and we've created our folders here, certain things that are work-related and not work-related, but the folder seems to keep on growing, and I think I found some stuff, legacy applications from long ago that I know I can get rid of. So it's just we're inundated with applications.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. So yeah, let's go ahead and close the poll. All right. Yeah. So at least, I don't know what happened there, but at least a large handful of us are using 5 to 8 apps in a given day. Some are using 13 plus. 1 to 4 is pretty great, actually. If you're using 1 to 4 apps, I think that's a pretty good standard to have. But 5 to 8 sounds about right. 9 to 12, 13 plus. Yeah, we got a lot of apps going on. You can go to the next slide. Perfect. Yeah. Thank you. So as you can see, there are a lot of apps out there. We've been inundated with apps, both in our work life and in our personal lives. And while it's true that there are a lot of apps, we hope to show you from this webinar that building a unified mobile app experience is not only possible, but it's actually pretty crucial for your users. So let's dig into why unifying your app experience is so important. And that is with the state of the apps today. So what does the app ecosystem look like today? I'm going to break this down into employee-facing apps and consumer-facing apps. So let's get started with employee-facing apps. As we witnessed from the previous poll and anecdotally from our own daily experiences as employees, workers, contractors, or even executives in enterprise companies, we use a lot of apps. We use our phones for email, conference calls, news, clocking in and out of work if you're hourly or frontline employees. We request time off, chat with colleagues, the list goes on, and we have an app for every single one of these tasks. If you felt overwhelmed by the usage of apps, you're not alone. In fact, the average digital worker uses 11 applications to complete their tasks, up from just 6 in 2019. And this switching between apps can lead to frustration, decreasing in productivity, and even burnout. So this means a loss of revenue, high turnover, and poor company culture for businesses. And that number of apps is only increasing. So clearly, coming up with a better system is not only nice to have, but a true necessity in keeping employees productive, fluid in their work, confident in their ability to complete tasks, and ultimately just happy employees. A better system can lead to saving time and money as well. So according to the Anatomy of Work Global Index by Asana, 9.6 hours a week could be saved, which is a lot of hours, if there was an improved process of working with multiple applications. And workers aren't the only ones feeling the burden of using too many apps. As consumers, we use apps for everything: chatting with friends, ordering food, buying holiday gifts, following recipes, checking our bank statements. And like, truthfully, before this webinar started, that's probably all the apps I used in the last hour. So I'll spare you another poll to illustrate how much we are inundated with apps in our daily lives. And I'm sure if I could see you all right now, which I can't, but I'm sure if I could, you'd be nodding your head in agreement that yes, there are so many apps out there, and it's kind of overwhelming. And we remove apps as quickly as we download them. The retention rate of Android apps is only 2.6% after 30 days and 4.3% after 30 days for iOS users. So this experience really isn't that great for consumers or the businesses who create them. In fact, acquiring new customers is much more costly than simply retaining an existing one. And we want to be retained. Just give us an app that is less disjointed, that feels easy, and don't force us to hop around from one experience to another with multiple apps, and we would keep using them. So as we discussed, workers and consumers are having a hard time juggling multiple apps. But what about the developers making these apps? Well, they're struggling too. Development teams are constantly looking for ways to improve their app development process, because currently, in order to keep up with demand, apps need to be developed in siloed teams. App development from siloed teams and created without distribution standards leads to a disjointed experience. And given a potential lack of governance of where an organization's app could be downloaded and how many apps or how the apps can be structured, end users are often lost. Additionally, conflicting release cycles due to multiple features being developed simultaneously can lead to bottlenecks, resulting in releases and updates being held back. And also with siloed teams comes the need for excellent communication to ensure each team has what they need from each other. So without precise planning, standardization misses can lead to either duplicate features or a disjointed UX and UI system. So in order to scale app development and provide exceptional experiences that customers and users demand from your apps, you'll need to reuse assets, fix bugs quickly, and deploy new features. And the current state of app development doesn't really allow for this to happen very easily. So who knew that a surplus of poorly organized applications could have such an effect on businesses? Enterprises are constantly burdened to grow market share, increase adoption rates of apps, improve customer satisfaction, bring new products and services to market, and ultimately increase revenue. And with the state of apps currently, these goals are a tall order. Luckily, there's a solution to this problem of poor app experiences, and that's why we're here today, to learn how Superapps can be the answer. But what are exactly our Superapps? So according to Gartner, a Superapp is an app that provides end users, customers, partners, or employees with a set of core features plus access to independently created mini apps. So to distinguish mini apps from, let's say, regular apps in the App Store, Gartner explains that there's no separate app store or marketplace for mini apps. Rather, they are discovered and activated by the Superapp users. And once they're used, they can be easily removed from the UI. So essentially, mini apps make up the core functionality of the super app, and the super app houses these mini apps and these core experiences that can be added or removed depending on the user. So it's completely customizable. And super apps are not just a cool new trend or a fun way of thinking about app development. They're coming in strong and are predicted to be heavily adopted. According to Gartner, by 2027, more than 50% of the global population will be a daily active user of multiple super apps. So it's important to learn about this right now. So you're in a great position to learn about this. IT leaders must exploit this global trend for greater business value through customer, partner, and employee engagement, according to Gartner. So Connor, do you want to discuss why super apps could be the answer for a better app experience?
Absolutely. Yeah, so thank you, Christine, for laying that groundwork for us. And I think we've heard a ton about the state of mobile apps today, where workplaces are struggling, where consumers are struggling, and we've seen how developers and enterprises alike are fighting their unique battles. And many are suggesting that super apps are the answer. So you're probably now thinking, why? Well, super apps allow for a complete digital transformation. So all these burdens that Christine outlined earlier are seemingly going to melt away. And why is that? Well, on the engineering side of things, having siloed engineering teams that often need to come together was an issue. These teams are constantly being hung up waiting for each other's builds or features to be ready so that they could release. And many times the engineering effort was simply spent rebuilding something that already existed in the web space. And but now with super apps, these teams are encouraged to continue working at their own pace and within their respective release schedules. And this is enabled by the nature at which super apps are structured with the core shell and the mini apps. So that web team talent that was once left more so to the side may now have their work successfully reused in mini apps, and those avoid constant battles for feature parity. And it also allows each team, web and native, to focus on what's most critical to them. And super apps also work to facilitate the scalability of the product. Major features like authentication can be built once and shared through the super app shell, as well as the subsequent mini apps. So there isn't that need to constantly log in and log out of all the apps. You log in once, you have access to what you need to have access to. Again, all of this is made possible through the modularized architecture and more standardized and streamlined delivery approach. And with web teams working on feature development for these mobile apps, there's simply more hands at work to get changes and upgrades out the door. And it's not just more things out the door, it's actually also faster, with the ability to deliver the changes directly to users through live updates of the web-based content. And this major switch equates to an all-in-one experience for the user. So everything the end user needs to get their tasks done, be it an employee, a consumer, is in one singular place. And we remove that toggle tax of bouncing around applications to do the exact same thing. And for businesses, this also means less apps out there in the market, which gives a clearer picture of what users need to download, be it that just one thing, and ensures a unified brand experience throughout their entire usage journey. It also results in a great app retention, driving overall growth for the businesses and its services while providing easier opportunities to create and add additional revenue streams to their offering. What we see then is an accelerated time from concept to business value. And we also get a much improved user experience for all parties involved. Now you might be thinking, okay, that sounds great. And it also sounds pretty complicated to do from scratch. And you're right, it is quite complicated. But that's why here at Ionic, we developed the Superapp SDK. Ionic's Superapp SDK drastically simplifies bringing a super app to fruition, arming you with solutions at each phase of the software development lifecycle. You can develop, build, deploy, and update your super app within a fraction of the time it would take to build all of this from scratch. So from the early stages of development, the Superapp SDK enables developers to create those core functionalities we spoke to earlier, like the authentication, the payments, and so on, within that native iOS and Android shell. And of course, if these are built within the web already, the SDK provides a solution to bridge that native and web gap for optimal code reuse. And as your super app is fleshed out, the critical mini apps need to be integrated. And built within the SDK is the capability to leverage any web technology stack or framework of your choosing. So absolutely no learning curve here. Use React, use Angular, use Vue, Vanilla.js, whatever your team is already comfortable using. And then moving towards deployment, you'll be equipped with the services to create the necessary web bundles and native binaries that are necessary for delivery to the end user. So even as your development pipeline matures, the SDK is packed with automation features to speed up that delivery process even more. And then the icing on the cake comes with the built-in feature to update those mini apps independently, which we touched on a bit before. And this is a huge bonus for things like A/B testing, shipping quick bug fixes, or even rolling things back. And again, because these changes are built at the web layer, end users see them instantly, and there's no more of the App Store middleman that can cause delays. So we can see that the offerings of the Superapp SDK have quite the impact on the developer experience as a whole. It works to remove the traditional roadblocks for software development teams. And now with native and web teams able to work together to build their Superapp in parallel, there's no more of that stepping on toes. Each team's working on their piece of the app autonomously. Then when they're ready, they can also build and ship their changes without waiting for other teams. And not only are we seeing a dramatically faster feedback loop for the end users, but features are no longer platform specific. So by integrating the web and native layers more closely together, users on each platform experience the same benefits at the same time. So from beginning to end of the DevOps pipeline, mobile app developers are equipped with the tooling to deliver both important and exciting experiences quickly for their employees and their customers. Of course, not every mini app your super app will need is already built, nor is every existing web app that will be leveraged as a mini app ready for cross-platform consumption. And that's why the Superapp SDK provides a complete mini app development toolkit. And included is an off-the-shelf design system that's adaptive by nature. And this means those visual components of your mini apps will adjust to the look and feel of the end user's operating system, where those user experience patterns unique to iOS and Android are followed on the fly with no additional effort from the devs. And in line with this are those native-like gestures and animations provided by the toolkit. Things like the push and pop animations into and out of screens, or the presentation of modals, or that feeling of scrolling gestures. All these nuances unique to the operating system are things you don't want to have to worry about. So devs aren't the only ones that are happy, but users get that performant and enjoyable experience as well. And as we mentioned, you pick your favorite JavaScript flavor and you're off and running. So our Superapp SDK works to enhance the skill set that you already have and not make you learn new things to be productive. Now, all that being said, I think it's time we get to take a look at what this could look like. And to do that, let's bring in Josh Thomas, our portal's product manager, who I'll call a resident expert in super apps these days, to take it away. So take it away, Josh.
Thanks, Connor. Hello, everyone. I'm Josh. I'm going to show you an application that we built. This is Supernova. Supernova is an iOS application. We're looking at it right now in an emulator. It was built to show off super apps and mini apps, but it was built mostly as a B2E application meant for employees of an organization to make use of different job functions they might have, like time tracking, human resources requesting time off, or giving accolades to coworkers. So let's go ahead and log into this application and look at some of the functionality. So you can see here from this main dashboard page, we can see a list of the mini apps that are available to me, recent activity, and a news feed. So if we go to the human resources portion, we can see that my previous time off requests are listed here, or I could request additional time off if I choose to. And if we go to time tracking, we can create a new time entry and choose what customer that is for. And people perks is for giving accolades, but I'm going to skip that for now. So of these applications, this main application, the super app itself, was built using Swift. And it's responsible for the authentication as well as showing this dashboard page and orchestration of the mini apps themselves. Human resources, people perks, and time tracking are actually completely different applications, and they're web-based. Human resources and time tracking were both built using Ionic and React. So if we go into human resources, we can see that we have this list of time off requests. Let's go ahead and bring up the code for this. And now we're looking at the corresponding Ionic code and React code responsible for this page. We can see the dashboard button here at the top. And when I click this button, it actually dismisses. So you have an idea that there's this separation, right? But how do they orchestrate together? Well, the super app queries and asks for what mini apps are available based off each authenticated user. So as I'm logged in as a contractor, these are the 3 applications that I have access to. And as I've logged into the super application, I authenticated and created a session for the native app. Now, when I go into a mini app, what actually takes place is that authentication information is passed into the mini app. So when I have these time off requests that I'm displaying, that's actually a request made by the mini app to a backend service to display using that same session that was created during the login of the super application. And this mini app itself lives by it on its own. So the team that's responsible for human resources is different from the team that's responsible for time tracking and is different from the team that's responsible for people perks. It's just that I have this ability now as a web developer to develop on a small piece of the overall puzzle. Not only can I develop in isolation, I can also deploy in isolation as well. So if I have a change I need to make to human resources, I can publish that change. One of the hallmarks of this super app experience, which is powered by portals, is the seamless experience of moving between web and native, and then allowing the web applications or the mini apps to make use of native functionality. So if I wanted to use a camera in this, I have the ability to do so. And when I click this dashboard button, what's actually taking place is it's communicating back to the native application. So clicking this HTML button creates an event and is published. The native application listens for that and then responds to it. In this case, the response is to dismiss the mini app and transition back to the super application. We think that this ability also, with the ability to do updates independently with the mini apps and do deployments, is extremely powerful. When you make a change and can publish that to your entire population of employees within a minute or two, it's an experience that you can't really receive anyplace else. So this is why we're really excited about the Superapp SDK.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks, Josh.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Josh. That was a great demo. Josh, hopefully you have time to stick around for the end of the webinar to answer any questions about the Superapp SDK. So we'll see more of you in just a few minutes. All right. So as you can see, Ionic is we're dog fooding our own products. We're playing around with the Superapp SDK, but we are not the only ones that are using the Superapp SDK to build super apps. Let's take a look at 2 major companies building their own super apps today. The first company is eGym. So eGym is a global fitness technology leader that provides fitness and health facilities with intelligent workout solutions built on a robust ecosystem of connected gym equipment and software. They need to be able to provide, eGym needed to be able to provide their gym customers with fully customizable app solutions that are unique to each gym. Because each gym partner has different needs, the development teams were finding it difficult to build a release cadence that worked for everyone. They needed a way to decouple eGym and the partner gyms' deployment cycles and bring updates faster to customers. So with the help of Ionic's Superapp SDK, they did just that. By using the SDK, they were able to build features once and deploy them to each customer, keeping core functionality like login access in the native shell, which saved room for each gym customer to create unique mini app experiences for their gym users. Most importantly, because each mini app is independently written, there's no need to follow a joint shipping schedule with eGym and the partner gym. And each mini app can be deployed to users automatically. The SDK enabled eGym's customers and partners to create a truly unique experience for gyms and therefore gym users. And then one other customer we have to discuss is a leading global health and beauty retailer who recently used Ionic Superapp SDK to build out an internal super app for their frontline employees. Employees working with this beauty retailer needed to enter and exit multiple applications at once to complete different tasks. This led to disjointed and frustrated experiences for employees, with their heads constantly using their phones. They couldn't really spend enough time with their customers. So in just under 5 months, the company was able to create a global application that could be deployed to different regions all over the world. The app allows employees to check inventory, order products, and more, which has increased face time with customers by 20% due to the speed and efficiency of the app, which ultimately leads to happy employees and more satisfied customers. Their pilot program is in progress and will be having a global rollout to 16,000 stores, predicted to happen in 2024. Wow. So we covered a lot in just this short amount of time today, Connor. We talked about what Superapps are, why they're so crucial to improving the app ecosystem. We unveiled Ionic Superapp SDK to help enterprises build out their own super apps. We gave a demo of the Superapp SDK using our very own Supernova. And we saw some real world examples of how our own customers are building super apps. So what's next?
Yeah, I think we got to get started building some super apps. If you're ready to get started, we obviously have a team of experts here that are ready to discuss your goals, get you started on the path to bringing your super app vision to fruition. And we also have a landing page full of information for you to learn more about all the benefits that super apps can bring to your organization as well. So if you haven't already, from the QR codes popping up on your screens, go ahead and take out the camera and scan it and open those links for future reference. And with that, I think we're ready for some Q&A.
Yeah, we've got a lot of questions pouring in here, and we do have quite a bit of time to go over a lot of these questions. So go ahead and put them in the Q&A box or in the webinar chat. We'll look at both here. But let's see. It looks like Josh has already started answering some questions in the chat. We have, let's see. I know, Connor, you can see these as well. I know I'm reading through these.
Yeah, I think one thing to maybe address, I'm not sure if we did, Josh, is someone asked sort of powered by portals you mentioned. So I guess maybe putting together like how all this stuff is integrated, Superapps SDK and portals.
Yeah, so portals is like this underlying technology of being able to use web assets within a native application. So what we found during the development of portals is that there were a lot of customers looking to use it to build super apps. So there are a lot of different ways you can use portals, but it seems like Superapps and the Superapp SDK is one of like the leading approaches that people are looking at portals for.
Awesome. Yeah. So it's really a piece of the larger puzzle at play. And I think that kind of ties nicely into a question here by Jeff talking about deployment. Is there a built-in system for deployment and or hosting?
Yeah. So I kind of, I should have included this in the demo, but I can talk about it now. We have a deployment tool for this, which is called AppFlow and Live Updates. You would make use of that so that each individual team that's responsible for the web application can publish those deployments using live updates through AppFlow. And that is our system for deployment. And that's available to anyone who would use the Superapp SDK.
And I think this is another good one. We got an answer for this one is, have we looked at using the Superapp SDK within an X workspace?
People are doing it now.
Yep.
So you can totally use it within X. Not a problem there.
And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that some of our own internal super app work is done within a
Yes.
mono repo as well.
Yep.
But
Yeah.
to clarify, it doesn't have to be, right?
No. And a mono repo makes sense if teams are working together closely and they live in the same repository, but it doesn't have to be that way. It could be a poly repo as well. So you could pull from many different repositories across an organization and have them all update into the larger super app as individualized mini apps.
Perfect. And we highlighted a little bit about, or quite a number of times, about the sharing of authentication and that process, what that looks like from the core side of things through the mini apps. So someone asks if we provide any authentication boilerplate, or they got to rebuild that on their own.
Maybe. So it kind of depends. If you're using web for a lot of it, there is a way to make use of some of our tooling, which is Auth Connect and Identity Vault, in order to work on this process. If you're building a strictly native application where the super apps or the super app is native, we don't provide something like that out of the box, but we do have plenty of examples on how to accomplish that.
Okay.
Speaking of examples,
yeah, go ahead, Christine.
Do we have any? I believe your demo app is in GitHub, available to review, or yes?
Yep. Yeah. So all the code from this application is available on GitHub to look at.
Perfect.
Awesome.
We have another question about, is all of this open source?
No,
It's
not open source.
Yeah, no, this is paid for product on our end. There are elements of the SDK that are included within the whole package that are open source, but as a whole, there are also paid for elements of the SDK. So a majority of what you see here today is part of that paid for element.
Yep. All the web portions themselves, that's open source. The interaction between the native application and web and allowing for all the super app pieces to work together, that is our paid offering.
Let's see.
Here's a question. Is the Superapp SDK available to be used across different companies? So as an example, a third-party developer creates a mini app experience and allows their enterprise partners to add third-party mini apps to the enterprise partners super app.
So this is a little tricky. It really depends on how you're publishing the application. I think that there are some questions about allowing this to occur third-party wise, but we do have customers using it this way. So let's say that you're collaborating with a partner, and the partner would be responsible for developing everything within the mini app, which you would then bring into your super app. That's kosher, and we have customers who are using that today.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a service that you're making available to one of your customers and you want to include it in their larger application, that's also something that you could do.
Awesome. I think another good one here is someone's asking, what's the difference here with micro front ends? Maybe provide some clarity around that distinction.
So the way I think of micro front ends versus super app is micro front ends are this way of including smaller experiences into a larger application, right? So when you think of, you could think of them a bit interchangeably, but a super app is really the intent of creating this shell application with smaller experiences that are complete standalone applications. It just so happens that they're available through the super app experience. So that's kind of how I think about it. Mini apps are like you're building a small, or micro front ends is you're building a small portion, and then that small portion can be available anywhere. It's nuanced. It's probably what I should say.
Yeah, in some conversations with Christine, I feel like in some ways I referred to it as like micro front ends at scale to some degree. It's many micro front ends all encompassed within one larger, broader experience for the end user. this might be a good one to dig into a little bit more is, you mentioned that the mini apps communicate via events, and how does that work exactly? Is that feature baked into the SDK?
Yeah, that is baked into the SDK. So there are a myriad of ways of interacting with the native application. And out of the box, what you're able to do is make use of all of the capacitor plugins. So there's quite a few capacitor plugins that will work in this for the Superapp SDK. And those include camera. I don't know. There are a lot available, right? And you can include those into your super app and then expose them to the mini apps themselves. Or you could use a pub subsystem that's available out of the box to communicate between the mini app and the super app. Or if you chose to, you could create a custom plugin for this as well. We find that a lot of customers find that the pub subsystem works very well for them until they reach a certain level of scale, and then they might decide to build their own plugin.
Got it. We got another question here about deployment. It says, where does sort of the app flow piece, our mobile DevOps portion of the Superapp SDK, where does that deploy to? This person says we currently host 2 web apps on Firebase hosting.
Yeah, so it's it's a little different because with web applications, they're hosted on a web server and they're requested on render, right? So you go out to a website and that website provides you web code, which you then execute. This works a little differently. So AppFlow has the ability to deploy, and when it's doing the deployment, it's deploying physically to the devices of those who have the native app installed on their phones. So we think that having these files be locally, actually, there's proof of this. It's not just thinking it. If the files are locally on device and being executed locally versus from a remote URL, the experience is substantially improved from the interaction time, the time to first load, as well as what happens in an offline experience, right? So when we say deployment, we mean live updates and pushing those files directly to the devices of the consumers or employees. Hopefully that answered it.
That's great. Here's a interesting question. Is this Superapp SDK strictly for mobile apps, or can it be an Electron app shell for Windows?
No, it cannot be used for Windows. We do not make this available in Electron. It's purely for mobile applications.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I think I see one more. Let me see. It says, how do you see the Superapp SDK versus multi-app projects for web-only dev, especially Angular? So I guess phrased slightly differently is, can you see a web team only sort of taking this through to fruition?
I would say that we're working on an improvement to the Superapp SDK right now that is likely going to make that possible. So more to be said on that, but if you'd like to see it, maybe a private demo, reach out and we can show that to you.
I think that's probably the perfect spot then, Christine. What do we think? Nice cliffhanger.
So. If you want, yeah, that was a great one. If you want to go back to the previous slide, I think we have a link in there. Yeah, to request a demo, to chat with Josh, get your questions answered even further. And more specifically, you can go to that ionic.link/demo or go through that QR code. If you want to learn more about Superapp SDK and bring this information back to your organization, you can go to ionic.link/superapps or use that QR code to take a look at our landing page. There we have data sheets to download. We're going to be launching an ebook very soon about Superapps. So there's plenty of content out there for you to consume. And of course, future, hopefully other additional webinars and things to discuss Superapps even further. So thank you so much again for joining us. Hopefully you got a lot of your questions answered and you learned a little bit more about Superapps and how they can benefit your organizations. Yeah, have a great rest of the year. Have a happy holidays, and we'll see you soon.
Take care, everyone. Thank you.